Good evening, 12s, and welcome to the Seahawks 360 podcast, a Sports Ethos production, where we look at the Seahawks from every angle every week. I'm your host, Candace Higgins, and I am joined by Ted from TED Talks Ball, or now Teddy Talks Ball. He is a regular guest on the show. Really big fan of him and his work. Be sure, if you don't already, make sure you give him a like, make sure you give him a follow. Good 49ers content over there. And so Ted, it's great to have you back. How you been, man?
Good, Candace. Great to be back. It's always nice chopping it up with you. You're one of the few decent Seahawk people out there. So, I mean, that's not actually totally true. I know Joe Stevens is a pretty good guy.
Yeah.
And there's a few that come into my chat on my YouTube channel that I like. But it's like if I count on one hand. Seahawks fans.
The feeling is mutual. There's not much love between the 49ers and Seahawks. Yeah. There shouldn't be too much love. We don't need that.
Yeah, it's off season, so hope springs eternal. I wouldn't say it's all wine and roses or rainbows and unicorns in Ninerland, but it's things could be worse. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. We got a lot to catch up on because I'm pretty sure the last time we played one another, the Seahawks were in a completely different place. We're in the middle of, I think you guys were a part of a 4 or 5 game gauntlet for the Seahawks perspective in terms of like the Cowboys, you guys, the Eagles, I think, and then you guys again. So at that time, we were talking a lot about the coaching. We were talking a lot about, I don't think I had any confidence we were going to win that game, and I was right. I did think that you guys had a Super Bowl quality team, which was correct, and ultimately you guys went on to make a really good playoff run, and when it was really close there down in the end. So just sort of where do you stand on how the year ended, what your opinion was on everything that went down? I know the Super Bowl is definitely a point of contention as you would expect it to be, and Kyle Shanahan, I know he's caught some heat amongst the fan base. At one point, at least, people were upset with him and sort of his history when it comes to having leads in Super Bowls. But I'd love to hear what you think about all of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty basic. Until Kyle proves he can win a Super Bowl, we pretty much have to assume that he can't.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to defend them against all the stuff with the Falcons and the big 28-3 comeback by Tom Brady. That Dan Quinn was the head coach. He was also the DC, and the defense gave up, the lead. 28 points is a lot to score against the Patriots defense. But now with everything, you kind of have to say, Kyle was a Super Bowl lead. It's not such a great thing. Granted, it was early in the Super Bowl this year when we had the 10-point lead. And if Dre Greenlaw stays healthy, we almost certainly win that game. If I'd even go as far as say John Feliciano stays healthy, then that pass where Juwan Jennings was open, I think Brock Purdy would have had time to throw it.
Mm-hmm.
And there were some coaching errors in the overtime, I suppose. I definitely felt like the defense was gassed, and getting our offense on the field first made some sense from that perspective. But I'm definitely not as in love with Kyle Shanahan as I was before the Super Bowl. That's for sure. Yeah. I was a pretty staunch supporter. Now I'm a kind of a healthy cynic when it comes to him. I just say, until we prove we can win it all, we can't until that point now. For this season, I think we're going to be Super Bowl contenders again. Absolutely. My big sort of 3 question marks are, the biggest is obviously Dre Greenlaw's Achilles, since he did it in February. Talanoa Hufanga's ACL, which he did, I think it was week 10 against the Bucks.
Yep.
But it was like November and mid-November, early November. And then offensive line, still a big question mark. John Feliciano at right guard, he's good, but he did get injured in the Super Bowl. He did say that this is his last year as well, too, and then he's going to retire at the end of the year. But right tackle is a pretty big question mark. I think this guy Dominic Pooney that we drafted might take over for Feliciano at some point during the season, or for sure next season.
Mm-hmm.
But right tackle is a pretty big question mark. And then, if you want to play the game of Brandon Ayuk as a question mark until he signs, I suppose that's
right.
doable, as a topic. It's what everybody's talking about since there's nothing to talk about in the offseason. I mean, remember last year there was like all the Trey Lance versus Brock Purdy stuff.
Right.
And this offseason, there's just no doubt Brock Purdy's the guy. So there's a lot less content for content creators to talk about. So they're all fixated on Brandon Ayuk, but I said all along, that he wants us and we want him. I think a deal will be had. I said 24 to 26 early in the offseason, and then as some of these big inflated numbers came out, including Devonta Smith, AJ Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and of course Justin Jefferson, all in like that $26 to $35 million a year range.
Yep.
I'm saying maybe more like 26 to 28 is the range now, but I think 27 will be the number, which for me, honestly, I think is a little bit of an overpay for Brandon Ayuk. I think he could be a wide receiver one somewhere else. I'm confident I would even say that he could be, but you don't pay for, what somebody could be. You pay for what they are, ideally what they've been for a couple of seasons,
Yeah.
So until he proves he can be a wide receiver one, I can't see paying him wide receiver one money. So I heard the Niners offered him 26. I think that's a reasonable offer, but apparently Brandon doesn't, or at least that's the game they're playing in the media.
Right, the leverage game. Okay.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on the DC situation, on defensive coordinator Steve Wilks,
Nick Sorensen being promoted?
Yep.
And then bringing in Brandon Staley. Well, you know what they say. I think we've talked about this, Candace, about people who like two teams. I say if you like two teams, you don't really love either one. And
I don't think we talked about that actually.
Oh no, okay. Well, I've said that to a lot of these people that have two teams in their bio, and I'm like, you're not a serious fan if you got two different teams in there.
Yeah.
So I feel the same way about Nick Sorensen and Brandon Staley. Like we clearly didn't love either one, so we liked two of them. I mean, technically, Brandon Staley is like a defensive, I don't know, like a board member or whatever you want to call it. Like he's a advisor or something.
Yeah, staff member, like an assistant or something.
Yeah, it's a kind of this amorphous, sort of hard to define role. But I think it's because they're not fully confident in Nick Sorensen. And if something goes wrong, they've got him waiting in the wings to take over. But then Nick is going to be this whole time looking over his shoulder, like, every decision he makes, wondering if that's the one that gets Brandon Staley elevated. And so I don't love it. I mean, I really wanted Mike Vrabel. I wasn't sure he would take a defensive coordinator, especially with a young coach like Kyle. Apparently the team wanted Belichick. I was pretty damn sure he was not going to go back to being a DC, especially not for a young whippersnapper like Kyle Shanahan. But I would have been much happier with either of those two over Nick Sorensen, I'll be honest. And there were some others names out there that like Vic Fangio's name always comes up. But the problem with him is that he runs a 3-4, and Nick Bosa is a pretty quintessential 4-3 D end, where you don't want him out in the flat covering, tight ends and running backs out in the flat. That's not his best use. You want him chasing the quarterback or, chasing running backs coming out of the backfield.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So what would you say? How do you view the outlook of this season, given that you got the Super Bowl, didn't make quite the jump there? Do you? And I know you just said, till he proves he can do it. Are you going in with this mindset of, do you lean that he will do it next year, that he won't do it? Sort of where do you stand on kind of what the ceiling of this team is?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, we just haven't beat the Chiefs, whether it was Super Bowls or regular season, since Mahomes got here. So if the Chiefs are there, again, I don't see how you could bet on the 49ers against them. When we do play the Chiefs this regular season, that's one of my few losses I've predicted for the season was the Chiefs. So yeah, I mean, I think we have a Super Bowl contending roster. I like some of our draft picks, especially Ricky Pearsall,
You big on him, huh?
wide receiver out of Florida. Uh, bottom line is, the Super Bowl hangover is real, and I told Eagles fans that last year, and they were like, "Oh no, that's not true," whatever. Especially for teams that lose the Super Bowl, it's really hard on teams, and so that'll make it tough. But the good news for us is the NFC's weak. I think the strongest team besides us might be the Detroit Lions or maybe the Green Bay Packers, maybe the Eagles. If all the Eagles draft picks turn out to be as good as like their, the pundits said they would be pre-draft, that type of thing. But we all know that's sort of what people said about the Eagles last year, and their defense was putrid. So,
yep.
So we'll see. But yeah, I think the Lions and the Packers and the Eagles are probably like a tier below the 49ers. I think the 49ers are the class of the NFC. I think the Cowboys are a tier below those three. Maybe the Rams there too. The Rams, they did a really good job revamping their offensive line. They got a lot of really great weapons with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. Kyron Williams was injured some in 2023, but when he was playing, he was damn near as effective as CMC on a touch-for-touch basis.
Yep.
And then they pick up Blake Corum from Michigan, where every big play they needed in that playoff tournament and the national championship game, it seemed like that was Blake Corum who showed up for him there. So and they got Higbee, he's a serviceable tight end, but I think they got a couple others that are solid as well. And then Stafford's a really good quarterback. And they look like they got some good defensive players they drafted. It's just Aaron Donald. Losing Aaron Donald, it just seems like that's going to be really hard to overcome the first year of his absence. But I think they should be a good team too. And then I don't know, maybe the Bears, maybe the Falcons with Kirk, yeah. And then obviously they drafted the kid from Washington.
That's so weird to me. I still can't get behind it, man. I can't get behind it.
How could I forget Penix? One of my favorite names.
You're higher on the Packers than I am. I'm not down on the Packers. I'm not sure that.
Well, we saw them in the divisional round, and they played us really tough for like 3 quarters, and then the rain slowed down, and then Purdy played. This is my thing about Purdy is he's a fair weather quarterback until proven. He's just like Kyle is a Super Bowl choker until proven otherwise. And again, not like we choked against the Chiefs. It's just we just didn't do enough to win. It wasn't like we had a huge lead late in the game. It was we had a 3-point lead in overtime,
right?
And no Dre Greenlaw to help enforce, because tell you what, he wasn't running around until Dre Greenlaw went out.
Yeah, no, there was a noticeable difference, I think.
Yeah, he's an enforcer. That guy he's a punisher, or he was. We never, after the Achilles, you just never know if or when they'll be back to 100%. But bottom line is with Purdy, with the fair weather quarterback, like the Browns game, he was bad in the rain. He was bad in the Green Bay Packers game in the rain. He tried a glove, and I think he got grip on the ball, but then I don't think he could ungrip it to release properly, and he threw it to one of their DBs with the glove on. Luckily, the DB dropped it. But then I go back even to the wildcard game against your Seattle Seahawks, where Levi's, where I was there, and it rained in the first half, and Brock Purdy wasn't real good. And I think you guys were up by 2 or down by 2, 16-14 at the half. One of our teams was leading. I think we were losing.
I think we won that. I think we're up.
Yeah, I think you guys were up 16-14 at the half.
Out in the second half, yeah.
Yeah, and the second half, Purdy, the sun came out, and the field dried up, and the ball dried up, and Purdy lit you guys up, including even a dropped TV by Ayuk, which would have made it even more dominant. But until proven otherwise, Brock Purdy's a fair weather quarterback to me. Whether it's wet conditions or I think windy, it can be more trouble for quarterbacks too.
Yeah, that makes sense. Man, you named every team in the NFC. We must not be a playoff team to you anymore.
No, definitely not. I don't pick the Seattle Seahawks to make the playoffs this year. You guys did some good stuff with the draft, I thought. You obviously have got Lockett and God, I'm blanking on your big guy's name.
DK
DK
Jason.
Metcalf, thank you. And the young guy too, Njigba, JSN out of Ohio State. But Geno, I'm just gonna be honest, he doesn't inspire me. I think he's a good, serviceable quarterback. He's efficient, but there's something he doesn't have that wow, whatever. In fact, real quick, there was a Sharp football put out a stat, and it was pretty interesting stuff. And I'm pretty sure Geno Smith led it. Yeah. All right. So highest rate of incompletions due to inaccurate passes. And so the worst quarterback was Deshaun Watson. 43% of his incompletions were due to inaccurate passes.
Give the stat again.
Deshaun Watson.
No. Give the stat. It said it's highest rate.
Highest rate of incompletions due to inaccurate passes. So like,
okay.
As the most inaccurate quarterback.
Ball.
That's sort of how I read it. These quarterbacks are the most inaccurate. And Deshaun Watson was the worst. Tyrod Taylor's way up there. It surprised me that not Lamar, that didn't surprise me, but Jordan Love, 36.2, that surprised me. But maybe that was from early in the season, and later in the season he did better. CJ Stroud was also really high on that list at 35.6% incompletions due to inaccurate. And CJ Stroud, I think, is a stud. But anyway, so the lowest on the whole list is Geno Smith, 21.6. So apparently he's very accurate, or at least doesn't have a lot of drops due to inaccuracy. Cousins is way low on the list. Patrick Mahomes, 24.5. Cousins is 23.2 ahead of Mahomes. Russ Wilson, another recent Seahawks quarterback, 25.3. So maybe it's more of the system. I don't know. Jared Goff, 26.3. So these are all really low, good, which to me says good. Justin Herbert, really low. Dak. Brock is a little bit higher, 28.7. Brock Purdy. And then who are some other surprises that were like Jimmy Garoppolo, pretty high, 32.2. That doesn't surprise me one bit. It surprised me that he wasn't higher. Tua, pretty high, 34.3. Daniel Jones, 34.6. Stafford, 34.0. That surprised me. I thought Stafford was pretty accurate.
He's a slinger.
He's a slinger. Yeah, I guess. Anyway, bottom line is, I mean, at least Geno's really good in that stat, but I think that's one of those things where stats don't tell the whole story. But and I don't know that you guys still did enough on defense, right? I mean, you guys have this new sort of LOB2 secondary, but I guess that edge player you guys drafted is supposed to be really good, and you guys got a run stuffer too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we got Byron Murphy, and then we re-signed Leonard Williams, who was great who was really
he's really good.
The only really good defensive player. I mean, well, there were other good players, but he sometimes single-handedly was like showing up in those games where the defense was essentially dead.
What about linebacker though? Bobby Wagner's done, right?
That linebacker is a real concern. So I actually feel really confident about the Seahawks' ability to make the playoffs, assuming that Mike McDonald is some of who. I mean, obviously with the new coach, there's going to be a question mark. You got to do it in order to prove that you can do it. But I just from everything I hear, seeing what he did as a defensive coordinator, not just with the Ravens, but also with Michigan, and able to really make some impact and not just having a bunch of stars, but having a bunch of guys who, I mean, Jadeveon Clowney had a career year with him. Kyle Van Noy had a career year. You know what I mean? Like guys who were just guys in that he was
kind of guys.
Yeah, journeyman. Yeah. And so that gives me a lot of optimism about his ability to sort of take what's given to him and make the most out of it. But yeah, no, I don't think last year was at all a reflection of what this team will be. And I definitely get why people are down on the team just from an outsider perspective. I think people's view of Geno is, I got to be honest, more part, in my opinion, based on just his history and Geno being Geno. A lot of people do just write off the 1 year as the 1 year, when in reality, that man probably had one of the worst offensive lines in like all of the league. I'm just going to be honest. Like that offensive line was a bunch of, I mean, the backups couldn't even stay healthy. The backups couldn't stay healthy. The level of turnaround on that offensive line was ridiculous. At one point, all 5 starters were out on that offensive line. And in my opinion, going into the season, one of the things that I said about this team was they had the worst offensive line depth in the entire league. So they would have needed to stay healthy in order to I think, continue the pace that he's on. And Geno's the kind of guy that does need a supporting cast. Like, I don't think he's a guy that's going to carry your franchise. He's not that, but he can be, in my opinion, a top 10 quarterback if you got the right pieces. And offensive line is big on that. In fact, sometimes I think he helped the offensive line look better because the offensive line was just that bad. But anyway,
the offensive line is huge. I mean, so many people overlook it. They don't get fantasy points, and they're not. It's not a glory position, but if you can't, keep your quarterback clean and help your running backs to get some yards, you're not going to win football games. It's just that simple.
We'll see.
Might be the most important position. It's 5 positions, but those 5 is probably more important than any other position on offense, even quarterback. So
completely agree. Yeah, because you can get more out of your quarterback if you've got a solid line for sure. I think Jared Goff is an example of that because I'm not sure he'd be Jared Goff, the Jared Goff we view now if he didn't have that offensive line, because we know how he was viewed when that trade was made. He was basically, maybe he got slightly more respect than Geno Smith, probably because he made the Super Bowl and he was younger. But there wasn't that big of a difference in terms of what people thought of him. But anywho,
he made the Super Bowl, but failed to score a touchdown in this.
Yeah, for sure. But really, I'm not going to say I do have questions about the offensive line going in next year. I think health is again a big thing, but they've done a little bit. I'll say a much better job compared to last year in terms of giving some depth at most of the offensive line positions. You got George Fant, who I think is a really good backup. I mean, he started for the Jets some games, so I think he's probably your quintessential swing tackle. They still got some young guys with a lot to prove. Oluwatimi was a great offensive lineman in college, but he didn't play much last year. Only 128 snaps, and those were inconsistent, to say the least. Can he step up in a full year of starts? Seems like they got him sort of slated to start. It's a young line. But I'm optimistic for. I would say the 2 things I'm least optimistic about is the offensive line and the linebackers, but everything else I'm pretty high on. I will say the number 1 reason is coaching. I'm just going to be frank. A lot of people don't understand why Pete Carroll got fired. We talked about this the last time when we were on the show. I just don't think the team was going to do anything under Pete Carroll. Like, nothing was going to change because a lot of the issues. This team is talented. This team, the defense is extremely talented. They've got excellent at the defensive back position. I think they've done a much better job at upgrading that defensive line when it used to be god awful. Could you stand a little bit better, maybe a little bit more of a star on the edge? Yes, but I think if you can get some really quality interior pressure, that helps out your edges.
Is Nwosu still there?
Nwosu is still there. He'll be back. He was out with a torn pec most of the season. So, I think he went out week 9. So about half the season.
He turned out to be.
You said what? Yeah. Still, really love him. And Boye Mafe is a rising star. He's really well. I think he had a really great year. He needs to take a step up if he's going to get into stars territory. You need to hit another level. But 9.5 sacks, not bad, especially for a guy who has not been playing football long, just in terms of his trajectory of his football career. So really high on those 2 guys. A lot of questions from me at rotation. I think there are questions about, I've never liked Darryl Taylor as an edge guy. I mean, he gets numbers, but I feel like it's kind of false stats. But anyway.
He had a dirty hit on us in one of those games too up in Seattle where he speared our running back who was stuck in the pile.
Yeah.
I did not like him for that, for sure.
I'm not going to defend him. I don't like him. So I don't like the guy. I just think he does have high upside. I can't deny that. But if you're that bad at the run, then
is he the one who had the broken femur starting out?
He's a what?
He had a broken femur when you guys drafted him.
Yeah, in this basically redshirted his rookie year.
Yeah.
So he's on a restricted tender this year. Big year for him. And we'll see if he can stick on. It wouldn't surprise me if they cut him, just because Mike McDonald, you need versatility. And if you're that much of a liability at the run game, which he is, and in my opinion, get off my field because everybody's just gonna run at you, man. It's nothing else to say about it. But really concerned about our linebacker room. I think if we're healthy again, they'll be all right. I think they're making the wise decision to invest on the defensive line and to divest some of their interest at uh, safety in particular by letting go Quandre Diggs, letting go Jamal Adams. Um, initially, I thought that made us worse, but after doing some research on the guys that we picked up in Rayshawn Jenkins and we got Julian Love, who I think really came on after his first few games.
Oh, from the Giants,
yeah. Those two guys I think will probably give you better production. I mean, they're not the names, right? Quandre became a name by becoming a Pro Bowl, multiple-time Pro Bowler on the Seahawks. Jamal Adams was a name, but he just didn't have it in him anymore physically. The guy was cooked. That injury, I think, just pretty much took him out. I don't think
quad tendons are brutal.
Yeah, it's a career ender. I don't think he's going to
quad
come back.
Tendon, patellar tendon, ACL, and Achilles. Those are my big four for
ACL and Achilles. I feel like in modern medicine, you can come back from more frequently and be yourself. But the other two, that's yet to be. There aren't many cases that have been proven.
McGlinchey tore his quad tendon, and he has his best year coming first year back. Mike McGlinchey, our right tackle, who went to the Broncos, enough to get paid $17 million a year by the Broncos. Yeah.
It's pretty impressive. I mean, I'm not going to pretend like I'm just super high on Mike McGlinchey, but given that he had that injury, I can respect.
It's one of the few, right? That I know.
Exactly. That could still sustain and be a serviceable NFL player at all. Because Jamal Adams was not in the end, and so I think just you upgrade some of your talent there. Like I said, you don't upgrade the brand. I think you upgrade the production, especially because those guys can play free safety. Strong safety, versatility is pretty much the name of the game. But more importantly, I just think the scheme, like getting someone in here who knows how to maximize their players on offense and on defense is a big deal. If they can prove that they can do that at the NFL level, I think this team, especially in a weak NFC, doesn't take much to make the playoffs anyway. Like you said, you got the Falcons, probably you got the Packers. I mean, you got some guys, but I think the Seahawks have a pretty favorable schedule. By the way, you got to get your kind of schedule prediction because I haven't looked at you guys' schedule, so it'd be good to kind of go through and if you can give me sort of what you're thinking for the team. But yeah, man, I'm higher on like. Here's a prime example. You know that Trey Brown, who was really kind of a backup defensive back at times, was the highest rated press corner in the league. Tariq Woolen was rated higher than Sauce Gardner in man coverage, but the Seahawks ran man coverage 20% of the time, despite the fact that they had elite level play, like league best play from the talent. But it just didn't fit their system or like the structure that Pete wanted to play in. So I think you asked a lot of your players to be square pegs and round holes. So you do that. That in and of itself helps a lot. I think JSN is another example of a guy who they played JSN like Deebo Samuel. Seriously. That's how they played him. Like tossing the ball behind the line of scrimmage, didn't have a lot of blockers behind him. I'm not sure what on the Ohio State tape made you believe that he was a guy that was going to make guys miss, that you could just throw the ball to the line of scrimmage and just have him go. That's not really his game. He's really a slot savant, a tech guy. You got to put him. I mean, you got DK, you got Tyler to help space out the floor. If you use him like a Cooper Kupp, then you can get way further with that. But yeah, but I get it. I get the outsiders. I kind of like the position we're in because everybody won't have expectations. But I don't think that there's, to be frank, that big of a difference between the Rams and the Seahawks. They both literally had the same record last year. It's just because McVay owned Pete Carroll. We couldn't get in the playoffs. Is pretty much what it came down to, and got swept in 2 games that I thought were more than winnable. I mean, really, it's kind of pathetic that they lost those games in the end. Well, the first game I'll give, injuries hit like, the first game of the week was against the Rams, and your tackles went down immediately in week 1, and then you lost a lot of players after that. So I get that, but that second matchup, there's no excuse for that. But anywho, so I think these two teams match up evenly. I would say Rams get the hedge on offense, no question. I think they're the better offense, better offensive line, better offensive talent. But I think the Seahawks have no question the better defense, better defensive line, better defensive talent. And so I think it's going to come down to those two teams in the division. I'm sorry, but the Arizona Cardinals are still the Arizona Cardinals. I know everybody thinks they're
They had
the
a lot of
shiny
draft picks, though, right?
Everybody's got them as like, making a run and frisky. And I'm not saying that they won't be, competitive. They have been with Kyler Murray, and we still seen them be bottom of the division. So from a division perspective, I hate the move of Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm not looking forward to guarding that guy, but I'm not sure that alone is going to be the difference maker. But we'll see. So the way I've got it set up is you guys obviously at the top. A flip. I'm a Seahawks fan, so I'm giving Seahawks the edge on Rams, but and then of course Cardinals last is how I view the division at least.
I'm with you. I think that's fair. I give the Rams a slight advantage over you guys, but it wouldn't shock me if the Seahawks, upset the apple cart a little bit. As far as our defense goes, we did have some notable folks that we added. Leonard Floyd will be on the opposite edge across from Nick Bosa. We're pretty bullish about that. But then we had a big departure of Eric Armstead leaving. Yeah. He's a guy who doesn't really show up on the stat sheet, but he is a big impact guy. We got Malik Collins from the Texans, who over the course of the year has similar stats, but Eric Armstead missed a lot of games. So on a game by game basis, Armstead's a much bigger impact guy. It's just last couple of seasons, he missed half the season both years.
Right.
And we got a guy named Jordan Elliott. His name's easy to remember because we have a content creator and reporter for the 49ers named Jordan Elliott. So I call this new one the other Jordan Elliott, the player, which is kind of silly. But he's supposed to be a pretty serviceable run stuffing defensive tackle. But, when you talk about Boye and Mafe, I think in the same draft class we took Drake Jackson, and he just really hasn't worked out yet. I'm hoping that he will, but it's looking pretty bleak for him. Another guy that's looking pretty bleak for on our defense is Ambry Thomas. He's, I think, not long for this team. We drafted Renardo Green out of Florida State, and he's supposed to be one of the best press man cover corners in this draft. And maybe a little handsy, but I think he'll do well in our system. If Darrell Luter doesn't step up, who kind of was redshirted last year with the injury early in OTAs. But, then we also got, what's the guy's name from Isaac Yiadom from the Saints, who kind of you never heard of him, but he had a good season.
With this game, I'm not going to like I am.
He had a good season last season, and there's reasons to be optimistic about him. So we have a few good options for replacing Ambry Thomas.
What is that?
But we obviously have Mooney Ward, who's a stud, and then Diamador Lenore, who is looking like he's starting to become a stud.
What's the last guy's? What position does he play? The guy from the Saints?
Yiadom, he's a cornerback.
Corner, okay.
They're all corners.
Safety,
we're a little thin. We've got Tig, who is like on his name. Our first guy we picked last year, number 87 overall, out of Penn State, Jair Brown.
Yeah, okay.
So he had a real solid rookie campaign, filling in for Hufanga. And then we re-signed. Did we re-sign that? I'm trying to remember the safety who was our free safety last year. I think we maybe didn't. So as we got Hufanga, we got Jair Brown, and then we drafted this Malik Mustafa, who's supposed to be a real big hitter, a really good sort of box safety. But they're all kind of like box safety kind of guys. I don't know who is rangy enough to play free safety. Maybe Jair Brown could. But safety is a little bit of a question mark for us. And so is defensive tackle.
I forgot. Yeah, linebacker. I did not get to talk about our biggest question mark. That is our biggest question mark, I think, across the team. Linebacker is. I don't understand why it wasn't worth a flyer on Jordan Brooks, who just went for $8 million. Wasn't high on keeping Jordan Brooks at a high $14 million price. I just didn't want to pay that much for a linebacker. But I think for Jordan Brooks' services, you were better off. Man, if they right now, Jerome Baker is we have him at linebacker. We also have Tyrell Dotson, who did great with the Bills, had a breakout season with the Bills, a little bit smaller over sample size, was one of the highest rated linebackers in the league. I think PFF had him rated at almost like a 90 or something. He's just, can he do it over a full season? But currently, both of those guys, as of the offseason, are injured. So the depth behind those guys are two undrafted, not rookies, but they're two undrafted players. They got Pat O'Connell, Pat O'Connell, I think, is playing. He's there, and John Radigan, who's like a special teams. He's been a special teams guy for the longest. He's getting first team reps right now at linebacker. And they got a rookie they just drafted, I think, too high in the 4th round, Tyrese Knight. I'm really not high on him. His tape was really a little too raw for my preference, or for them to be counting on him so much. So I'd say, I was going to say it's a question mark equal to the safety, but no, you guys are still in a much better position, in my opinion, than we are at linebacker, because after Jerome Baker, who's, I think, a pretty good, he's above replacement level, a linebacker, and Tyrell Dodson, who does have star potential, but just needs to prove it over a long period of time. It's bleak, man. It's just a dark hole on the roster. And I will say this, linebacker is something that's not hard to find, right? So in terms of things or areas with which you need to replace or that are your biggest concerns, like safety, I think I would lean linebacker, safety, especially in the modern NFL. You can find those guys, or you can find guys to step up in places that you wouldn't expect, or you can get even a proven veteran guy for really cheap. So hopefully that's something that they fix. If not, I think they could probably fix why if they get into camp and see, God, this is really as bad as at least I'm anticipating it will be. I think you can quickly fix it. So I'm not like in panic. Well, that doesn't send me in a tailspin about the team, but I am in a tailspin about that position. No question about it.
Makes sense. And then I guess there's one other person I forgot to mention on defense who's pretty notable. Mm-hmm. We got Devondre Campbell from the Packers. He struggled a little bit for the last couple of seasons, but he was saying they were misusing him, and he's really excited about being at the Niners. He feels like we can use him properly. So if Dre Greenlaw, isn't ready week 1, which is pretty darn, likely that he won't be ready week 1, that could be a really serviceable vet to fill in with Fred Warner there on the linebacking core.
Yeah, I would agree. That sounds solid. In terms of Seahawks land, one of the biggest topics of the conversation, or one of the biggest topics of conversation for the team, is Draymond Jones moving to edge. That seems to be something that they'll do. So I don't know if it's going to be Uchenna, and if he's going to take Maffei's place, or if he's going to, he's not taking Uchenna's place. Uchenna's a starter, but either he's not going to start and he's going to be a backup edge, but they seem to be there. They'll play him all over the line, as they will with all of our defensive line guys at this point. All have versatility, but they say he's training specifically at that edge position, but primarily took offense off at mandatory minicamp. All his snaps were at edge, so that could be at a space that I do have questions about. If you're going to put Draymond Jones there, he struggled in it, I think, last year. But that had not to do with circumstance, in my opinion, because he did really well in when he was with the Broncos in Denver. When he played edge more than he played on the interior, that was his contract year. That's what ultimately got him paid on a second contract with them. So I think he's shown ability, but one, they basically had him do that after Chenna went down. So it was a very on the fly type of decision. And two, the scheme was a mess last year, just on every angle, front, back, side to side. It makes sense, and the players voiced that to them. The scheme did not make sense. And Draymond Jones also said something similar that from a scheme perspective, he was dealing with quite a bit. So if they can clean that up, then I think that's a huge boost defensively for the team. If it works, I think it can.
He's a good player. I remember when we lost DJ Jones to the Broncos, and I felt like he's very different than DJ Jones, who's more of a run stuffer.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt like they were somewhat equal, not quite equal talents, but they were in the same conversation for sure.
Yep.
In that defensive interior. And if he can play edge, maybe he could move Mafe inside on like NASCAR packages or something like that for second and long, and third down.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how they work that out for sure, because I think Draymond Jones deserves to start, but I mean, maybe not. If Draymond Jones isn't starting on your defensive line, I think you're in pretty good shape. So
yeah,
I'll take that. I'll take that for sure. But I want to ask you sort of, because I'm not familiar. I mean, we all know you guys, the offense, the explosiveness of that. Where do you guys stand on depth? Did you guys lose any pieces? Did you retain all your pieces? Where do you stand on the depth behind the stars? Because I'm not super familiar with where you guys stand on that.
Yeah, I mean, we drafted Ricky Pearsall out of Florida. He's our fastest, most highest jumping, broad jumping, best hands, one of the better route runners on the team. Now a lot of people are lukewarm on him. Maybe
I mean, I'm not down on him. I'm just not high on him either.
People have more of a late second round grade on him.
Yeah.
Or mid to late second round grade. But I think he fits our system well. And I think if one of the big three goes down of Debo, or just I mean, I'm not going to call Juwan Jennings a big three, but Debo or Ayuk, I think Pearsall could fill in nicely. We also got Jacob Cowing, who's real fast and a really good deep ball catcher. A little bit of issue with hands, but very fast and very explosive. But obviously we got Christian McCaffrey. We got Elijah Mitchell. We picked up 2 running backs.
I was going to ask about the depth behind CMC, because he had an incredible year with you guys from a health perspective. But
yeah, he did. And you can't expect that with the amount of touches he gets.
Right.
To repeat itself. We got a guy named, I think it's Isaac Garendo, who's a real fast guy, who supposedly is good at blocking and receiving as a running back. But there's just not a lot of tape on him, and he has not a lot of college production. But a lot of people were saying they thought he could be better as a pro than he was in college. Okay. And then we got the kid from Mizzou, I always forget his name, who led the SEC in rushing last year. He was undrafted, but he looks like he could be a good backup, because we've got Elijah Mitchell, who's a really solid back and, literally never fumbles, but he's always injured. And so I keep hoping we'll trade him away. I just think he's a waste of a roster spot because of how injured he gets. And then Jordan Mason, he's shown a lot of flashes, but he hasn't been given a lot of looks, I think maybe because of the blocking and the receiving side of things. So we'll see. I think we're pretty set at wide receiver. The 2 guys on the hot spot for me for receiver are Ronnie Bell from Michigan, who we got last year late in the draft, and then Danny Gray from the year before, who was a 3rd round draft pick out of SMU. I think those 2 guys are on the hot seat with these Cowing and Pearsall draftings. I think those guys are going to have the upper hand.
Makes sense. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, because I'll be honest,
and then I wanted a tackle. We didn't get a tackle. I wanted a tight end who can block and catch. We didn't draft one, but I think we may have got one in Logan Thomas coming from the Commanders.
I like him.
He's nothing special, but I want a tight end, Candace, who, when we put him in, you're not telegraphing the play, because when you put in Charlie Warner, it was either going to be a run or you had one hand behind your pass or one hand tied behind your back if you're passing to him. And same thing with Dwelly. He has great hands, but couldn't block himself out of a paper bag. So again, if you bring him in, it's a pass play, or if we're trying to run it with Ross Dwelly in there,
right?
You're just not doing yourself. The only way he could block was like releasing off one end of the line, run all the way down the line of scrimmage, and then lay into somebody at full speed. But inline blocking with his hand in the dirt, he was just useless. So
yeah, I like him as a player. I think he's really solid. And I
maybe Latu will step up, who we drafted last year, and he was a injury red shirt. Cam Latu. But man, I saw him in camp, and he just had the worst hands I ever saw. So,
right.
People called him drop to, whatever. I hope he can show us something. And then the other, it's kind of like the other two we already had. Braden Willis caught everything. He led one of the days in camp. He led the day in receptions. Another day he led in targets. Great hands, great route runner, can't block. So it's still the same old story with our incumbent tight ends. So, and then I guess there's this undrafted guy out of like Furman. Is there such a college? Furman, I want to say. And he's got big hands. He's 6'6" or 6'5", and he's good receiver. But again, he needs to learn how to block. I think as long as they're willing blockers, they can probably pick it up. But I think his name is, I want to say Mason, but I know it's P-Line is his last name, P-L-I, or Pline, P-L-I-N.
Oh, that does sound familiar to me.
Yeah, and then there was some guy, Eric Saubert, we picked up off the scrap heap, who I think is just camp body. I can't imagine he makes the roster.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I forgot to talk about tight end on our end. I mean, we re-signed Noah Fant. I'm really high on that move.
He's solid.
I'm higher than most Seahawks.
And you kept Colby Parkinson, right?
So what?
You kept Colby Parkinson too, right?
Oh, Rams got him.
Oh, Rams got him.
Nope.
Oh, so that's the other solid tight end I was thinking about with Higbee. Yeah,
no, we have Farrell Brown, who had a breakout year on the Patriots. Apparently, he was known more initially for his blocking, but he was able to do. I guess he had a lot of explosive plays from a few touches. He doesn't have a ton of production. He's got years of being sort of a balanced guy. I think, like I say, he's been viewed more as a blocker. So we'll see what a lot of people in the Patriots fan base, they were saying he's got, underrated hands, so he can be a catcher. We'll see what that comes. And then we drafted AJ Barner from Michigan at the tight end spot. So that's our tight end room right now. But we lost Will Dissly. He went to the Chargers. But I'm really high on the Noah Fant move. I think, man, the guy split reps like crazy. Like they didn't even name him tight end 1. Like he was tight end 1A. It literally on the depth chart, him and Will Dissly were together. And so in terms of how you split those reps, and then you still had Colby Parkinson, there just weren't enough targets to go around. If you look at what Fant did per target, it's like 12.6 yards per target. I mean, the guy really was a big play machine. And for whatever reason, Shane Waldron, like he'd have a 25-yard play, and then Shane Waldron would be like, "Great, cool, that was fun. We're gonna do something else now." Just go away from that completely. I don't really understand the logic behind it. But anyway, I think he was criminally underutilized, and he put up way more production just with the Broncos. So anyway, I think you get better just by giving him the opportunity. And then you got your blocking guys. People say that AJ Barner has underrated hands as well. We'll see. He's a rookie. I don't love the tight end room as much as I did last year, but just from I think explosive, like taking advantage of your talent perspective, it'll be better. Because it wasn't fair to I think any of those 3 guys. I like Colby Parkinson as well, and I think he could have got more touches and would have done more with opportunities, but just wasn't the space with a 3 tight end monster.
You guys had three solid ones that could all block and catch with this 3. And
so it was too. I think it was a little too crowded ultimately. So I love it to be more balanced, but I get what they're doing and saying we're just going to feed Fant. Now, if he goes down with injury, I'm not going to say they're screwed, but I don't love what we're looking at unless AJ Barner steps up, but we'll see. We're not gonna count on that. I'm not gonna panic about a tight end anyway, because this team is more about wide receivers anyway, with the JSN, DK, Tyler, and then I think I like what you got on the back end with Jake Bobo. He showed some real special play. I like him a lot. Didn't think I would, but I really do like Jake Bobo. He's a guy, man. So anyway, that's
at UCLA. Yeah, one of my fellow 49ers content creators, Bryant Culp, is a huge Jake Bobo fan.
Huge on Jake
He
Bobo.
was crushed.
I thought he was crazy, honestly. He was right. He was right. Now, I definitely thought he was.
He's like the liker of kickers and special teamers and lost dogs, and Jake Bobo.
But man, I know we got to get out of here in a few minutes, but I probably like to end things off. We sort of gone through each of the teams, strengths and weaknesses, off-season moves, etc. But the update, I haven't really looked at you guys' schedule at all. Paid too much attention to it. So just kind of hear your predictions on how that goes.
All right. Do you have it handy?
I
know how we start the season. So we start the season on Monday Night Football at Levi's against Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. I'm chalking that up as a win, but it's kind of interesting our history against Aaron Rodgers, and that he's 0-4 against the Niners in the playoffs. But in the regular season, I don't think he's lost to Kyle Shanahan in the regular season, including COVID 2020 and 2021. That was the year Jimmy scored the touchdown with 37 seconds left or 38, and Aaron, drove him down in 35 seconds to let Mason Crosby kick the go-ahead field goal to win the game. That was when I kind of fell out of love with. I don't think I was in love with Jimmy G, but it was when I really jumped off the Jimmy G train, and I was like, all right, put Lance in. I'm ready for Lance.
That'll do it. That'll do it. So you got that as a win. I think that'll be
too fast, man. What are you doing? What's up?
Yeah. Okay. That's a home game. Okay. I can see why you give the W on that. That's a tough game.
Yeah, I think the Jets defense is really good. I think they got some good weapons. I just worry a little for them's sake about their offensive line a little bit.
Yeah, it's fair. Week 1, I'd say you probably get the best of them, but after that, I think it really is a big question. Okay. Then you guys got the Vikings and the Rams.
Yeah, I'm definitely picking us over the Vikings. And the Rams is in LA, right? So
the Rams is in LA first.
That's Levi's South. That's just another home game for 49ers. we actually get one extra home game every year at SoFi. So yeah, I'm picking us to beat the Rams. So we're 3-0 at that point.
Okay. So then you got the Patriots and the Cardinals. I had a
5-0.
I'm not gonna lie, both of those are home games.
Yeah,
that's
5-0.
Yeah. Okay. Then you got Seattle, Lumen Field.
I wouldn't be surprised if we dropped that one. Even though I think we're the better team, Lumen Field's been a house of horrors for us. Other than, I guess, the last 2 seasons, we did well at Thanksgiving, and then that first full start for Brock Purdy. I guess it was a second start because the first one was against the Bucs the week before Tom Brady. I'm not going to say 6-0. I'm going to say 5-1 one way or the other. Either that or we drop that game to the Rams at SoFi. So
yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Okay, then you got the Chiefs at home. So.
Big loss, 5-2.
Big loss. All right.
Yeah. Dallas, until proven otherwise, we cannot beat the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes. Until proven otherwise.
Fair. Yeah, that's fair. Okay. Dallas and then the bye.
Yeah, well, we own Dallas, so 6-2.
Definitely. Okay. And you got, after the bye, you got Bucks on the road, and then
7-2.
Seahawks at home.
Call it 8-2.
Seahawks at home.
Yeah.
Then Packers at Lambeau Field.
Call it 8-3.
All right. Buffalo Bills at Buffalo. This is December now. So
I would normally say 8-4, but like the Bills had so many defections last year, I just don't know if they're going to be the same team. So I'll say 9-3.
Okay, that's fair. All right, then you got Chicago Bears. That's at home.
I mean, I love what they've done, but 10-3.
Yep. I would side with that. All right, Rams at home. At home.
11-3.
Second home.
Yeah.
All right, Miami. That's in Miami.
Yeah, I'll say 11-4. I think Mike McDonald gets the best of us.
All right, and Detroit. That's at home.
Yeah, I'll give us a loss there too.
And you end with the Cardinals in Arizona.
Yeah, I guess there. So what do we got? 12-5.
Yep.
Yeah,
that sounds about right. That's kind of. I mean, I didn't look at you guys' schedule, but I was kind of thinking you'd be in that, 11-6, 12-5, something like that, depending on health. I think. But honestly, looking at you guys' schedule now, even if health is not on your side, I don't see the massive collapse of in some.
And I said Mike McDonald. It's Mike McDaniel.
Oh yeah, I keep that. I didn't even correct it at all because all I'm thinking is Mike McDonald. That's funny.
Didn't sound right to me when I said it.
All right.
But yeah, I mean, I think 12-5 seems pretty. And that's sort of where we've been every year, except for the COVID year when we had massive injuries. We're kind of 13-4, 12-5, 11-6. I feel good about any of those.
Yeah, no, that schedule wasn't too bad. I mean, for a team that went to the Super Bowl, I would honestly thought it would be more challenging. But I think it's about the divisions that we play in general. Probably broke your way for sure. I know we gotta wrap up here. Anything else we want to hit on before we go? And if not, then tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, just TedH6. You can find me on Twitter and X, and then also YouTube. And then I've been playing around with Teddy Talks Ball instead of Ted Talks Ball, just in case I ever get big. I don't want the TED Talks people to come sue me or whatever. But I think right this second it does still say TED Talks Ball, but it also says TED Talks Ball, bikes and bites, because I've started a bike channel and I definitely want to start a food channel as well too. So check out Teddy Talks Bikes, all one word as well too, if you're into e-bikes or regular bikes as well. Thanks for having me, Candace. It's always a pleasure chopping it up. And did you want to go over the Seahawks schedule this year at all and give me your thoughts on that? Or
yeah, sure, man. If we got time, I got.
I have a 1:30 show. People watching maybe not know what time it is, but that's not for 30 more minutes. So
all right.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking around this time to wrap things up, but around it doesn't have to be right at 1 o'clock.
Okay, cool.
So
all right,
I don't want to shoot you away when you're always so gracious to have me on and to be on my show.
Oh, I appreciate it. But yeah, I'm pretty. You're gonna think I'm crazy. Yeah, you're gonna think I'm crazy. I had us at the optimistic version was 11-5, but realistically, I can just see 10-6. But all right, so let's go through why I'm so high on my team. And I will give the caveat that maybe coaching completely collapses. But all right, so we start off with the Broncos.
I'm optimistic for your coach. I think he's I think you guys did a good job for replacing Pete Carroll. I think he's going to do well.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you like in theory to get an offensive guy, but I mean, I just didn't see a market for it. I mean, I'd rather give me a defensive, like a quality defensive coach over just a mediocre offensive coach any day. Like, I know offense is the way of the league, but quality is quality, in my opinion, at the end of the day. But we start off, open up the season versus the Broncos at home. So I've got that as a win for us. Let's see, make sure I'm going to get a different schedule here. Week 2, we play the Patriots. That is on the road, but I still have that as a week 2 win. Week 3, we play the Browns. Wait, hold up. No. I'm just kidding. This is the wrong schedule. Sorry, bear with me. Okay, here we go. I started to trust ESPN. I started to trust the Seahawks website to find out that they have not updated it at all. So yeah, we're just gonna go ESPN. Okay, week 3 is Miami. While that game is at home, it's Miami, and I just think Miami's offense is just much better. So that's a loss. first loss of the season. So I got us 2-1 at that point. We played Detroit on Monday Night Football the following week. I've got that as a W because for whatever reason, Geno Smith plays his best. One, in Detroit, because it's weird. Two, I think it's a weather thing. I consider Geno a fair weather quarterback as well. In domes, the guy is just lights out. Like his Saints games, his Detroit Lions games are the best of his career, consistent. So, but I do like what the Lions did in terms of making some changes to their defense. So it won't surprise me if things changed, if luck changed and things went in their way. But all things being equal, I'm just going to count on, oddly enough, being able to steal the show because that's how good he is in domes. It's insane stuff. It's like 400 yards. I mean, you remember that? I don't know if you remember it's almost legendary battle between the Lions and the Seahawks where they both basically put up 50 points because the defenses sucked. And so it was just the offensive firepower. Fun stuff. That's why I'm sure it's a primetime game. I think either way, it'll be a fun game. All right. And so then we got I've got us 3-1, but like I said, that's a one I can see being flipped easily. I mean, ultimately, that's not hard to see. But then we play the Giants. So I've got us winning that one. On a short week, though, I keep going back and forth. So I think we can finally win one. I think. I think with coaching, we can finally win one against you guys and finally split. And I was leaning towards the one at home because I thought that would make the most sense. But it is coming off a short week, and I don't like that. So I don't know. But I don't think I pray, but we can't get swept 3 times in a row. I don't think I can show my face on TED Talks ball again, man. If you guys sleepless, I think that's the end of you seeing me on the show. I'll be on here with a paper bag on my head or something.
Oh, man,
I gotta believe that changes. So I got us splitting, man. Either one of the weeks, but for now, I put us winning. Oh no, that's on the road. Okay, so I've got us winning the home game and losing the one on the short week. Was my initial verdict. Then we play the Falcons in Atlanta. I like the Falcons team a lot. I did go ahead and put a W for us, though, just because I think their defense is like really bad. And they didn't do anything to make that better in the offseason. I mean, Kurt's going to be better. Their quarterback play is going to be better. But yeah, and then specifically the way with which Mike McDonald likes to change things pre-snap to post-snap, I think you can get Cousins that way a couple times, a touchdown or two, just enough, you can shut them down for a touchdown or two, just enough to give Geno on the offense the edge, assuming we have a decent offensive line. Though that's a question. So then we've got Buffalo. This is also a little optimistic, but it's I've got us winning that one because I'm not really high on Buffalo, but I think they've lost quite a bit, and I think they're trying to see if Josh Allen can, I guess carry the team, so to speak. Now that they're paying him, his contract is sort of kicked in. You're seeing them sort of dwindle down some of those resources. I think they were going to do something that probably needed to be last year. I'm just not seeing. I'm not seeing it, but I mean, they're still a very talented team. I sort of like an underhanded thing I like in the matchup against the Bills is Leslie Frazier, who was on the Bills defense, is now sort of the head advisor to Mike McDonald, sort of that veteran guy who can walk him through the ups and downs of an NFL season. I like that in terms of just having inside information and planning for that team. He knows a lot of the nuances, and I think that could be a potential edge and advantage when it comes to strategy. But if we lost that game again, I'm not crying tears because it is still the Bills. Then we play Los Angeles. That's at home. Los Angeles, I've got a splitting with because I think the edge has always been coaching, in my opinion. I think these teams have had similar rosters. I think the Seahawks had a better roster last year, to be honest. Just a lot of those guys weren't known. And they ended up having a couple breakout stars in Puka Nakua and Kyron Williams. But going into it, I think most people would have said the Seahawks had the better roster, and yet McVay owns Carroll. So that was the end of that story.
I
Got
said
a
that
split.
last offseason. I thought you guys were going to be better, definitely.
Yeah, I think it pretty universally that was the consensus. But yeah, McVay really does own Pete Carroll. It's not even funny anymore. Then we play you guys again. They've got a bye week in week 10, which I love. Week 10 bye week. Come back, play you guys. So the first one was at home. The next one will be Levi Stadium. I think that's the one we lose, but I don't know. I'm just hoping we win one of those. Arizona Cardinals got us winning that. Got us losing at the Jets. We go to the Jets in December. I just think, one, that's not a good time to be at the Jets anyway. But also, I mean, the Jets are a good team, assuming that they are healthy. And with Aaron Rodgers, honestly, Aaron Rodgers is sort of, I'm not going to say he's not owned us, but in recent years, it's not been pretty. That's for sure. In terms of matchups. I've got, I'm just going to go through this because I can't, I'm losing track of the numbers, but like I said, ultimately, initially I had us at 11 and 6. We got Green Bay. I have us winning that one, but it'll be close. I think it's really a tight game in the end. That one's at home. So to me, that's the edge because I do like how these teams match up pretty well. I'm just giving us the home thing. I think with a better defense, the home advantage is better than it's been in years past, which to me has not really been strong. That's almost been something that I haven't even factored into our schedule anymore because I'm not saying it's not loud, but it's just what makes the 12 special is when you get stops and then the crowd gets loud and then it sort of builds on top of each other so then the opponent can't hear. We've had maybe one game like that, but it's not, defense just hadn't been good enough to make that like a unique standout factor. And I think it will get back to that. So then we've got Minnesota week 16. I think that's a win. And what I put as initially a win against Chicago in December, I think might be a loss. Gino does not play well in bad weather. It's going to be really cold in Chicago. I think if that game is at home, we win. But I think I'm changing my mind on that, and I'm giving them the edge. And then we end the season with Los Angeles, and I've got us. We win that first one, we lose the second one.
So for the Bears, they obviously have a hell of a defense. And like with Caleb Williams, I'm not a big fan, but I do give him his props in that, like, you know, the USC offense was super prolific, and really what killed him was their defense. And if you look at his wide receivers, like none of them were drafted highly. So like maybe he really is a difference maker. I don't know. Like I said, I don't like him on a personal level, but I do have some respect for him based off of not really having any like first or second round wide receivers on his team. And I think 1/3 and like nobody else till Brandon Rice went like way late in the 6th or 7th round. So
he'll have to earn my respect. I'm indifferent on him. I'm not. I don't think that he's the second coming of Patrick Mahomes the way that most of the media seems to be convinced. I think that's a little overblown because they said that about Trevor Lawrence, and I mean,
ooh.
He's been pretty.
Can you believe his contract he got? Holy smokes.
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence thing is wild to me. And they really said that man was the best prospect since Peyton Manning, and I mean he won the one playoff game. That's cool, but I don't see it. I've yet to see it, but they see it and they paid him for it. So I'll be honest. I know you got to get ready to go, man. But a big reason I'm high on Geno, it has a lot to do with the contract, man. I like for the Seahawks to experiment with this whole prospect of, man, build a team around. I mean, it's almost like the 49ers prospect, in my opinion. You don't have to have like the guy that can carry the franchise if you got the pieces around them. And I'd like for the Seahawks to take that sample, because paying guys who aren't the guy, but who's the guy that's next up is just not a recipe for, I think, to win a championship. I'm not a fan of it. So that kind of gives Geno more value in my mind than a Trevor Lawrence or whatever.
I'm with you there. I'm not a big fan of Trevor Lawrence.
So yeah, that's where I got it. Optimistic. I give it Homer glasses. I'll give it all of that. But I do think the team is pretty underrated, and I think the NFC is pretty weak, and I think ultimately that'll be the difference. But we'll see. I mean, all hell could break loose too, and so at least we on our pick. So if it all goes to hell and I'm wrong, we'll get a top pick.
Well, good luck with your O-line. That's definitely a key piece.
Thank you. It's a big deal. Question marks. Abe Lucas, if he's back and he's healthy, I love that guy. I really think he's got superstar talent. But to be honest, the pancakes that guy created was amazing as a rookie, but he just wasn't healthy last year. Even when he played, you just see he didn't have the power. They're saying he had a surgery that will prevent him from, I mean, Pete Carroll used the word chronic initially, so we're kind of worrying about his career, but apparently since he's had the surgery, that's a lot of those concerns have been erased. So you can see if he can stay healthy. Charles Cross has got to do something. He's got to take a step forward in my mind. He's got a lot to prove, in my opinion. High on Olu as a center. Really high on our, at least the depth position, the right guard, Anthony Bradford, Christian Haynes, all those guys. I really love the rotation there. They need to do something about left guard, though, because Lincoln Tomlinson is right now our left guard, and that terrifies me.
Oh, we know about Lincoln Tomlinson. That boy cannot pass block to save his life.
Yeah, it terrifies me.
Good luck, Gino. Good luck.
Now, Christian Hayes is a guy that I think could play left guard. I think he can right now. They got him playing right guard exclusively, but I think he's athletic enough, and I would rather they just put him there than Lincoln Tomlinson. But whatever. I mean, it's still early in camp. Training camp hasn't even started, so I'm just hoping that Haynes can be a starter. Because if Haynes can be a starter, then it really does give me a lot of hope in terms of optimism on what the offensive line can be. But it's question marks, no question about it. They were mediocre in Geno's first season, and Geno played like a top 10 quarterback. So can they be mediocre? Hopefully. That's how I view it. I mean, Geno if you can give him decent pass protection, he can do quite a bit with it, given the weapons that he's got on the team. But you got to give him a shot, man. Got to give him a chance.
Got to keep him clean.
Pressured on 47%.
Partially clean,
snaps,
right?
Man. They pressured him on 40% of snaps, to 47% of his snaps last year. That's insane stuff.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Well, Candace, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it, man. Everybody be sure to follow Ted at TedH6. Be sure to follow the show, Ethos Seahawks, for updates. We'll continue wrapping up our How the Seahawks Stack Up series. We'll go through and do predictions. I'll use some of the information I've heard from Ted. Tino and I will be back next week, and then we'll predict the NFC West standings. So anyway, that's it. That's all the time we have for today. And as always, go Hawks.
Peace and go.